Thank you. Thank you very much. I am so excited for this session. You have no idea what you're in store for right now. I'm going to make a couple of short introductions, and then this is a very special session led by two of our amazing experts on poverty. And I want to make an announcement before I forget that in the lobby, as soon as you exit this ballroom, there is a kitty corner table where Pamela Covington is selling her memoir, A Day at the Fair. Please stop by. Please stop by, talk to her, buy a copy, read it. It will have a profound effect on you. So I want to get us started. I want to thank Stephen Blobaum, who is standing on the stage right now. Thank you so much, Stephen, for standing.
Now I'm sitting.
So Stephen lives in Des Moines, Iowa. He's been a volunteer with Results since 2014 and has been an expert on poverty for the last 2 years. He has firsthand experience of the programs that we are advocating on, and is an incredibly passionate person. If you get a chance to talk to Stephen. He's going to tell you what it's like. So please do talk to him. And he does a lot of work in his own community. He's very involved and really does a good job of holding accountable organizations like Standing Up for Racial Justice. And he also works with Urban Dreams in Iowa as a member of Public Allies, which is an AmeriCorps-funded nationwide nonprofit capacity building organization. So please talk to him. Our headliner for this afternoon, Pamela Covington, also an incredible woman I am privileged to know. She has a 30-year career in communications and training, just a brilliant person. And one of the things that she mentioned in one of our trainings that really stuck with me, one of us, I think it might have even been me, I have this habit of being like, oh, I'm sorry, or, sort of diminishing some of the work that I do. And she said, stop it. Don't ever minimize yourself. And that was such a powerful lesson for me. So you're going to get that, and you're going to get so much more out of this session. And so I'm not going to talk anymore. And I would love to welcome Pamela Covington to the stage, and she's going to get us started with a reading from her memoir.
We lived on Whitaker Street in a large Victorian-style house adjacent to Forsyth Park, a lush 30-acre area spanning a number of city blocks. The park was both a center of activity and a source of peace. Runners ran along its paths, while tennis players dashed about on its courts. I often went there to roller skate. Aged trees draped with wispy Spanish moss overhung the old-timey lights lining the park's borders. And at night, slivers of light would peek through the branches, and the moss would cast eerie shadows on the sidewalks as it waved in the gentle wind. Even when I was at home, I was in the park. The second-story porch overlooking it was like a box seat at the theater, but much bigger. It was my living room, and I spent many hours out there, day and night, whenever I could, me, my plants, music, and at night, candles. I still remember the sweet and blissful fragrance of wisteria that flourished in the park's private garden, and how, from up on the porch, everyone's voice diminished as it traveled on balmy Georgian breezes. Everything about our house in Savannah exuded beauty and comfort. Watson, the children, and I didn't want for anything. There was always plenty of delectable food and great music, and I enjoyed entertaining our family and friends. Life in Savannah was comfortable as could be. But what started as idyllic slowly changed. Watson and I began to have relationship problems. He had a problem, but I loved him so deeply that I hung in there, hoping we could work it out. On his good days, he was everything to me, friend, lover, and my children's dad. He was an excellent provider. Our domestic needs were taken care of well beyond the basics, as long as I could live with the frightening and often lonely uncertainty of his worsening behavior. And by the time he'd asked me to marry him, I was already too afraid of him to say yes. Having left Savannah now, I'm in a chapter called Prize Ribbon Blues, and I begin describing to you the alternate housing situation. A multi-paned window lit the tiny front room. The walls were beige and freshly painted. I could still smell the paint in the air. The dull brown tile floor had been patched over. There were indentations in it where previous tenants had placed space heaters. The kitchen was trying to be white, but it was too old to succeed. It too contained only one window, a slim one. There was a crankcase type, like the one in the front room. And the cabinets were so thickly layered with coats of paint that the hinges had a hard time swinging. I peeked under the sink. Flakes of rust from the bottom of the crusted cabinet drawers had fallen to the space below, and there were gaping holes in the wall around the pipes. A shelved area around the corner from what would be the refrigerator wall served as a pantry. The little bathroom was shadowy. The tub, barely trimmed in dried-out caulk, had tarnished, old-fashioned faucets and a stationary shower head. I slid my hand across its irregular surface. Certain spots were gritty, while others were layered with paintbrush strokes. But at least it was a standard-sized tub. The outdated sink had separate mismatched hot and cold water spigots, and the toilet boasted a black horseshoe-shaped seat, the kind I remembered from elementary school. I couldn't test the plumbing, though, because the water wasn't on. Living in cement would take some adjusting. It would be like living inside a vault, and the unit was awfully small. In fact, not one room in my home in Savannah was as small as any of those in the apartment, except maybe the walk-in closet in our master bedroom. Although I was torn between relief and dismay, I still believed I could make the apartment do. As cramped and run down as it was, the tiny apartment was now home base, and I was glad for it. My jaws weren't tight anymore, and the persistent urges to cry were no longer plaguing me. The clammy feel and stale scent of the clothes I had on. I was about to sleep in yet another night was no longer a consequence. That I had my own roof was all that mattered. Lights or no lights, heat or no heat, water or not. The boys and I huddled on the mattress on my bedroom floor, and the moving quilts served as our covers while the warm, protective glow of a candle stuck on top of a sardine can guided us into sleep. So we finally got off the streets. We have a roof over our heads, and now I'm about to see about getting some water and lights on. We had to do something, and soon. My teeth were coated and my scalp was dry and itchy because my hair needed washing. I tried to hide it by tucking it into a knot on top of my head. Even worse, there were no more changes of clothes in Devon's diaper bag. I wanted to throw away the clothing I had on. I dampened them with tears every day, slept in them every night, and sweated in them while unloading the boxes and furniture. 2 buttons from my blouse had been lost in the shuffle. The bends in my jeans did not flatten when I stood. My bra and panties were no longer a comfort. Nevertheless, I had to wear the same clothes at least another day and go out in public in them. With no place available to wash or bathe myself, there was no getting around that. In this scene, I'm at the utility company after receiving a check from Catholic Charities to turn on my utilities. It was Friday, and there was a long line of people being corralled to the clerk's windows by chrome posts connected with thick black ropes. Everyone's eyes were on me as I made way to the end of the line. I guessed that it was because of how bad I looked. Their stares made my ears burn, and I swallowed repeatedly. I knew I was a shabby sight, but none of them understood that this wasn't my normal appearance, or how badly I felt about being seen in public this way. In Savannah, I was rarely seen wearing the same thing twice. Usually, my hair was clean, shiny, and styled, clothes matching, and body clean, complete with a hint of expensive perfume. I wanted to defend myself, to turn around, walk through that crowd, and shout, "I'm a person too. This isn't how I live. I like nice, clean clothes, just like you do. I'm just going through a hard time." But I didn't have the nerve. I just crossed my arms over the front of my blouse where the safety pins were attached, and I tried to ignore the gawkers. I knew I would do better again, even if they didn't. Thank you. Love you too. EOP, baby.
EOP in the house.
You know me.
I just want to do a little compare and contrast here.
Yes.
As far as our experiences of poverty, how they're the same and how they're different. So we'll just go through a little checklist here now. Now, they didn't have the child tax credit back then, did they?
Not that I'm aware of.
And not that you had enough money to file taxes to file the child tax credit.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. And then I don't believe there was an earned income tax credit yet back then, early 80s.
Yeah, early 80s we're talking.
Yeah. Now, your children, you did eventually get on Medicaid then?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Okay.
We had Medicaid, which really came in handy because my oldest child had behavioral problems that required a lot of psychological evaluation that I certainly would never have been able to pay for.
Yeah, it seemed like with my family, there's mental health issues and mental health issues with my kids. So, yeah, so we did we did a little Medicaid, and then at some point we had a little bit more income, so then we went on the CHIP program. But that wasn't.
Yeah, that wasn't.
Yeah. And then back then, it was food stamps. It wasn't called SNAP yet.
That is correct. It was strictly known. When we keep saying over and over, formerly known as food stamps, we're literally referring to the era in which it was simply just called food stamps.
And like on the cover of the book there, it's literally, those are what the food stamps look like, or
Yes.
looked like.
Yes. And if you have any of them now, go on eBay. They're selling for phenomenal prices. There's a whole story to just getting the images, which I thought would be in the public domain because they were taxpayer paid, but it turned into a whole nother project, just getting the images of them for the book cover.
And it wasn't like, an EBT card that we use now, and you actually had to take them out of the coupon booklet.
Yes.
So when you were standing in line, all the people around there knew exactly what you were doing.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there was no just slipping the EBT card.
But the neighborhood I was in, everybody had them. Initially, I had some qualms of wondering how that was going to feel when I got in the aisle and start checking out, but the gentleman behind me had a book, and the people in front of me had books, and well, this is a neighborhood where everybody had books. They were literally currency.
And then when your kids started public school, then of course they qualified for free lunch.
Yes, and that is one of the reasons why I'm always wanting to speak out for child nutrition programs and SNAP, because certain things were being assumed. I did not have a stove for 5 months, and ye old food stamp rule says thou shalt only buy food that you can take home and do what with?
Cook.
No stove. So
no refrigerator either.
No refrigerator either. And so any kind of meals that my children were getting at school quite likely was going to be a step above what I could provide them from cooking on a kerosene heater.
And this was before the breakfast program too.
Yes.
Early 80s.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah. Yep. See, my kids have partaken of all of that. And then to get into now for me, I did the TANF, but you had aid.
It was Aid to Families with Dependent Children, AFDC.
Right, and so that was before it was block granted. And then 96 is when it went to a block grant, and that's TANF. And our family experienced TANF a couple times, and it's a joke. It really is a joke. The cash benefit. It wouldn't even buy a week's worth of groceries. Yeah. So I can't.
It might work if there were only 2 weeks in the month.
Yeah, maybe. And I kept wondering how I was going to be able to live on welfare and just sit back and kick back and sit on my porch and smoke cigarettes.
Where's the third check?
I didn't quite, and I was really disappointed that I couldn't just sit and collect a check and all those benefits and not do anything.
Right.
Damn.
Well, my children and I were living at half the established poverty level at that time, which was somewhere like 8,200 or something for a family of 3. And even with child support and the $152 a month financial assistance I received for a $170 a month apartment, I'm already at a deficit every month. It was just tough all the way around. It was definitely not very livable.
No, not at all.
No.
And the things that you had to do in order to make ends meet.
Yes.
Because unlike you, now, my parents and my in-laws, of course, were able to work and save and buy a house and pay it off, and something to do with that racial wealth gap, I think is what they call it. So you did not have, you didn't have any family that you could go to and say.
Not really.
Yeah.
My relationship with my parents had become somewhat distant, but not only that, I had been on my own since I was 17 years old, and I've always prided my independence. I'm a person who, once I left home, I never went back to mom and dad, and I had felt, totally responsible for my being, and that was just not something I had contemplated, leaving there to go return home to my family in Pittsburgh.
And you grew up middle class.
Yes, I did. We lived very comfortable. For black people at that time, we lived very comfortable. My father was a property owner, and he sold soda on his job. He was a construction worker, so he always had enterprising several different things going. I wonder where I got that from, right? And and my mother never worked. So yes, we.
So I mean, you didn't, and unlike when you moved to Florida and the people that lived there in generational poverty.
Yes.
They didn't grow up in a middle class.
Right.
And
so that's another reason why I'm doing the work I'm doing, because you see, if that safety net wasn't there for me, if those Pell Grants weren't there for me, that food stamps, that subsidized daycare, as long as I proved I was a full-time student, if that wasn't there for me, I could have very well adopted a sense of futility and gave up. I could have very well had my children become the first in our family to be a second generation of poverty. But once I saw how paltry it all was, I vowed from day one that, oh no one's going to dictate how I'm going to live. But most importantly, because I realized that when you are raising your children, you are giving them definitions of life. And if I show 2 young black males that this is normalcy, then that's what they would grow to think was normal. And so I'm scurrying as fast as I can to do whatever I can to make this part of our past quick, fast, and in a hurry.
Yeah. But there's so many people out there that don't have that family or don't have those people around them that can help them.
2 minutes of what?
Where are we going now? Oh, okay. We're good. All right, Christy, keep it time.
In 10 minutes. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. So anyway, Pell Grants. That's something else that we have in common.
Oh, good.
Because when I had to go back to school, that's the only way I could do it was Pell Grants, and then some scholarships.
Oh, yes.
For books.
Yes.
But
scholarships are a problem when you're on assistance.
Let's talk about that. Go ahead.
Yes.
Let's talk about that.
After I was in school, initially I started at junior college. Initially, I went into the program seeking financial aid however I could, but once I demonstrated academic ability, I became eligible for other forms of assistance. Well, you are required at any time that you have a change of income to your household to report it. When I went in for my reevaluation and reported the fact that I had received scholarship money, the end result of it was that they cut my food stamps down to $25. I was livid. I was like, what can you buy for $25? Kool-Aid with no sugar? I thought I was using the welfare for the thing that was supposed to be. I'm using it to lift myself up. And okay, they said, you got good grades. We're going to push you a little further. And I felt like I was being punished for helping myself instead of, it's just always worried about the little guy having too much and the big guy's not having enough.
God bless Ronald Reagan. That's just that's what I mean. My wife and I we faced the same thing, and like I said, unlike you, we had parents. I had parents that lived geographically close. Her mom, was farther away, but if we didn't have that little bit of help from them, not a wife and 2 kids and me, no, there was not ever enough to pay the rent and the utilities.
And then you have things like diapers. A baby has to have diapers.
Exactly.
You need toilet tissue.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and when the car breaks down.
Well, the car died 5 months after I got there. So.
Mm-hmm. And then it was a matter of you pushing the baby in the stroller and carrying the other one and going all.
And since I didn't have a refrigerator stove, I'm already walking back and forth to the grocery store every day, because if I'm going to cook some meat, I got to go to the store to get it. Yeah.
And then how long did it take? Did you get the phone first?
I think I got the stove first.
You got the stove first.
Yes, I got a stove first.
And then how did you manage to get the money to get the stove? Where'd that come from?
That I don't recall. But I know I bought a used one, of course.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
To finally get a stove.
Yep. Because until then, I mean, you were cooking on the
Kerosene heater,
the
which was
kerosene
another
heater.
mouth to feed because kerosene was $1 a gallon a day, and I have to have money to buy kerosene. Food stamps isn't going to take care of that either. So I really became good at spending food stamps multiple times just so I could get the change. And that's how I washed my clothes. I had a jar, and I would purposefully make multiple trips to the store to get the change so we could wash clothes. You know, I mean, I always hated the laundromat anyway, and now I hated it even more. And then after the car died, I'm using the red fryer wagon with the garbage bags to cross a expressway to get to the laundromat with my change I saved from my food stamps, hoping it doesn't rain. And it rains every day in Florida.
And that's with both boys.
Okay.
Okay, I know where we want to go.
Guys, I'm trying to be slick over here.
You had 10 minutes on the interview, right?
Oh, okay. Well, where are we going now then?
Okay.
What are we going to do
Okay,
then?
so I'm going to speak. Okay, there we go. All right. So now, if I may, I would like to tell you a story to give you another portrayal of a day at the fair. In Savannah, our holiday meals were as splendid as our Victorian home. But in Jacksonville, having left that comfort because my partner suffered with post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of Vietnam and was subject to the most frightening rages of violence, we were now in a position where on a good day, I cooked grits and Vienna sausage on a kerosene heater. One day, as I was loading those clothes in those garbage bags that I was telling you about into my car, I hear a male voice. It turns out it's a neighbor. He and I chat, we make small talk, and he makes me an offer. He says to me, "Well, I see you've been over there by yourself doing all of that stuff, and I don't mean to get in your way at all. I know you're just getting settled in, but if there's anything you should need, please don't hesitate to ask." I stopped and I thought about it and I said, cooking. I said, "Eddie, I got a gift certificate from the food bank for a turkey. And if me and my kids could cook that turkey, we could eat off of that for days. What are you doing tonight for Christmas Eve?" Eddie says, "I'm going to visit my baby and his mama." He said, "But I tell you what, when you come back from the laundromat, stop by and get the key. And then that way, while I'm gone, you could just go around the back. All our kitchen doors are lined up in this tenement. You're in the back. And do your thing, cook the turkey." So I went to the laundromat, and while I'm there, I'm watching the clothes in the dryer and corralling my boys. And I'm thinking, do I really want to be going into the home of this man I don't know? Wasn't sure. But I came home with clean clothes and a 12-pound turkey. When I got back, I dropped the frozen turkey in the sink, made a beeline over to Eddie's to get the key. Eddie invites me in and offers to give me a tour of his kitchen. We get in his kitchen. It's not in much better shape than my own. And I look at his floor. It's gritty and ashy and gray, and I see trash, and I'm like, wow. Then he walks over to the kitchen drawer to show me where the utensils are. When he pulls that drawer open, roaches come out of it and they're running everywhere. But I act like I don't see them because I'm just assuming that's the proper thing to do. And I'm not going to judge him. He's offering to help me. And so I got my key, and I was like, okay, I got the key. And that's pretty much how I spent my Christmas Eve, okay? Now, Christmas Day, a little different. My children and I had been invited from a social services worker to come over to her house and spend some time with her family. I got there. It was wonderful. Yes, I stepped in the door and you could smell all this food. No wonder it was a spread in 2 rooms and kids were running around playing and you could smell the newness. You know how when you open all those gifts and those packages on Christmas Day and it just pervades the room? And there was music playing and I did real good until a song by Donny Hathaway called This Christmas came on. It flashed me back. I started thinking about how I used to have that food, I used to have that family, I used to have that security, I used to have that comfort, and now it's all gone. So I started bumming out. And everybody had been so nice to me and my kids. I didn't want them to think that anyone had said or done anything to upset me. So I figured it was time for me to go. When I got back home, I said, well, Pam, you know you still got that turkey in the sink. You might as well cook it. The turkey was really special to me, and I needed to lift my spirits, so I always do that with music. I put some music on. I put on Prince 1999. Because tonight we're going to party like we're going to cook a turkey. I dote over the bird, I'm seasoning it, I'm stuffing it. I want everything just symmetrical and perfect. I get it in the center of the pan and I'm like, okay, I got my key. I'm gonna go out the back kitchen door, count down those same 6 doors because I wanna make sure I ain't trying to put the key in the wrong person's apartment, right? I get down there at the door. I got this pan on my knee. It's a little flimsy aluminum thing, you know, you just sell them in the Dollar Tree. And I put the key in. Good. I got the right door. I push the door open, flick on the light switch, look over at the stove, and 2 big rats, 2 big ashy gray rats are screeching at me. And at the same moment, I drop my pan, my turkey bounces out, slides across the floor, and hits the wall. I'm totally beside myself. I step out on the back stoop. I'm like, damn it, damn. Not this too. Me and the kids have been through so much already. God, no, not this too. Just couldn't believe it. I retreated back to my apartment. Threw myself on the sofa while I decided whether I was going back or not to get that turkey. And I realized that this being my very first Christmas in the ghetto, the closest I had ever come to rats were 2 movies called Willard and Ben. But after the encounter with that real-life ugly welcoming committee, I came to realize that in my new environment, it was quite likely that even bigger rats would come to the surface. Thank you. Do I want to do what?
If you want to, can you keep it to like 5 minutes?
Okay, so I just go straight to my next talk. Okay.
So I just want to thank Stephen so much for sharing a bit of your story and just keeping it real like you always do. That means a lot to me, so thank you. And like I said, please stop by the table where Pamela is selling her amazing memoir. Buy a copy, talk to her. We're not taking questions because we're at time, but I want to have Pamela send us out on a note of hope. So thank you.
Okay. What do fairy tales, the Bible, and 60 Minutes have in common? Each of them, through decades or even ages, continue to provide powerful, thought-provoking messages. I'll tell you what they all have in common. Their use of storytelling. Yes. You see, storytelling connects, creates teaching moments in which persons are exposed to knowledge that otherwise they may never receive. Storytelling taps into the emotions, makes people think, and can sway a listener's views. And stories are sticky stuff, okay? They make people think and they leave memories. Psychologists say that we use stories to make sense of our world and then to share the understanding we've gained with others. My experiences of having gone from living a comfortable middle-class lifestyle to one that was a personal life catastrophe certainly changed my level of understanding. And so I decided to tell my story in A Day at the Fair, One Woman's Welfare Passage. And I'm going to be honest with you, there were many points where I wrangled with myself. I'm like, Pam, how much of your personal business are you going to put out there? People asked me that they were worried about me. And I said, enough to leave a mark, enough to set the record straight, or you know what? Ain't no sense in me even bothering writing a book. So I wrote that book for these purposes. The first one is to demonstrate the importance of having a social safety net that is robust and can support people in times of struggle. Everybody always talks about a failure. Okay, hey, I'm a welfare success story. My second reason was to show things that are in the system that work and don't work. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And if it needs fixing, please do. Thirdly, to inspire other individuals who are in some downtrodden mode or experiencing some life adversity to not adopt a sense of futility, but instead to press on with resourcefulness and determination. And then finally, I wrote that book. I put my stuff out there to provide an accurate portrayal of what life on welfare is like. Because you got a lot of people who don't know jack about the struggle of poverty.
Damn straight.
Harboring all kind of wrong ideas about what needs to happen with our country's anti-poverty programs. All right. So you have that power too, though. And there are some things you could do, and I'm going to be brief about it. First thing is you can help support other people's stories. You can share your stories, either written or orally. And when you go on Capitol Hill on Tuesday, use stories to remind them what's at stake, to remind them the benefits that they are to struggling families. So I want you to take this with you when you go on Tuesday. I'll be right there with you. That Alice Walker, the author of The Color Purple, said that the most common way people give up their power is thinking they don't have any. Well, you know better. You got the power, and you know what to do. Thank you.
Buy this book.
Thank you all.